We're going to talk about two quarterbacks who had very solid 2019 seasons and then relatively disappointing 2020 seasons, and are both looking to kind of regain that 2019 form and take the next step in 2021. And so I want to dive into USC's quarterback Kedon Slovis and and Penn State's quarterback Sean Clifford, because even though they have different playing styles, I think they're in similar situations. Just for the simple fact they had good 2019 seasons, and then 2020 you saw them take a step back. If you ask the majority of their fan base, I'm going to talk about that a little bit, because I think, yes, there's some fair criticism, but also a lot of unfair criticism, because I think they played better than their fan bases say. At least Kedon Slovis did, for sure, and then Sean Clifford did towards the end of the season. But again, I think they're in similar situations as far as wanting to have a bounce back here in 2021. But before we dive into the quarterbacks, into kind of the comparison and what quarterback you'd rather have in your roster in 2021, I just want to encourage you to consider subscribing to our YouTube channel if you like any quarterback-related content, whether it's this quarterback talk like this, film breakdowns that we do, and that's the majority of kind of the content we do, and we'll get back to that when the season starts. But any quarterback content is fair game here. Okay, so let's talk about USC's quarterback, Kedon Slovis. So he kind of busted onto the scene in 2019 after JT Daniels, the original starter at USC, was injured, and Slovis had a great 2019 season. Let's look at his stats real quick. In 2019, his completion percentage was 71.9, right under 72, over 3,500 yards passing, 30 touchdowns, only 9 interceptions, and 8.9 yards per attempt, doing a good job pushing the ball downfield and put USC in a good position, and they were always competitive offensively. 2020 comes around, and I still think he played pretty good. I think there's one thing that you kind of want him to work on to improve, but I think he got a lot of unfair criticism. Sure, some was fair, but I think he had a pretty good season. It just wasn't that huge next step that I think people anticipate he was going to take. But I think he's going to take that in 2021. But let's look at these numbers real quick. And remember, this is 6 games from the COVID season. So his completion percentage was 67%, so it was down almost 5%. So that is kind of the one of the main things that you think it was not alarming, but probably why he didn't play as well. He was just inconsistent in some of the passes he usually makes. He still made the difficult passes. It was kind of like the minute, easy passes that he would miss every now and then. He had over 1,900 yards passing, 17 touchdowns, 7 receptions, and 7.3 yards per attempt. So the 7.3 yards per attempt was down almost 2 full yards. It's a pretty big deal in today's day and age. Remember, 2018 season, he was at 8.9. So I think not pushing the ball downfield as much and having some inaccurate throws is what kind of made the 2020 season a step. I wouldn't even say a step back. It just wasn't as big as a step forward as I think people were anticipating. The 7 interceptions, 3 of those interceptions were in the Oregon game. The Oregon game was his worst game by far. It was the only game where his completion percentage wasn't over 63. It was like 53. So those numbers kind of pulled everything down, and of course they lost. He had 3 interceptions, and that was their only loss of the season. So I think that Oregon game made his stats look even worse. But I do expect him to take a bounce back year in 2021. He can make every throw on the field. He's accurate. Even though he was down in his completion percentage in 2020, 67% is still a very good completion percentage. I think they're surrounding him with good weapons, and so I think they're going to be able to put him in a position to succeed. I think he's still uber talented. He's got a lot of talent around him. So again, I expect Kedon Slovis to have kind of the bounce back year. And one quick thing as well. It was only 6 games, so he wasn't able to play himself. I don't even want to call it a slump, but there's still half the season left where he could have turned around and had a really good season. We see that often where guys struggle for a few games here and there, and then the end of the season or whatever it may be, they play a lot better. So he didn't get the opportunity to turn it around. So I expect a good 2021 season because I think he's a really good quarterback. I think the coaches are going to put him in a position to succeed, and he has talent all around him. Again, I'm probably more optimistic in general, but that's my thought. So let's move on to Sean Clifford, Penn State's quarterback, who had a good 2019 season, and then 2020 really took a step back before kind of showing that he still has ability the last few games of the year. But I expect him to, again, take a step forward in 2021 with their new offensive coordinator that they brought in. I think he's going to help put Clifford in position to succeed. But let's look at these numbers real quick and talk about him. So in 2019, his first year as a starter, he had over 2,600 yards passing. His yards per attempt were 8.3. His completion percentage was 59.2. 23 touchdowns in the air, only 7 interceptions, had 5 rushing touchdowns and 402 rushing yards. So I think the biggest thing that separates him from Kedon Slovis is his athleticism. He doesn't want to sit in the pocket and just rip it nonstop. He can. He can do a good job of that off of some RPOs and some play action. But he's a deceivingly good athlete who can throw on the run and hurt you with his legs. Okay, let's look at 2020 again. So Clifford actually played 9 games, I believe, in 2020. So even though he missed some games, he still played more games than Kedon Slovis did. So in 2020, let's see, Clifford had 16 passing touchdowns, 9 interceptions. His completion percentage was 60, so just up just a little bit, and the yards per attempt were 7. I can't read my handwriting. It's either 5 or 3, and his passing yards were about 1,800 or so, I believe. Rushing yards were 335 and 3 rushing touchdowns. So Clifford's biggest thing was his turnovers. Okay, in the first 5 games Penn State played, they went 0-5. Clifford had 8 interceptions, and that's not counting the fumbles. I think he had fumbles in there as well. So 8 interceptions in the 0-5 stretch. Only 1 interception in that 4-0 stretch. So I think if he can eliminate turnovers, even if his completion percentage doesn't go up dramatically, if he can stay at 60%, use his legs to hurt you, and take care of the football, I think Penn State can be dramatically better, as they showed going 4-0 at the end of the season. The one thing you do want to see from a passing standpoint, I think, improve is you would like that completion percentage to go up. But even if it stays at 60, I want the yards per attempt to go back up to where it was in 2019, over 8. 7.3 or 7.5, whatever it was, because my handwriting is bad, is not bad by any means, but you'd still kind of want that number to be back at 8.5 range for Penn State's offense, so it can kind of keep the defense from crown line of scrimmage. They know he's going to push the ball downfield, and it's going to be able to help the run game more and help Sean Clifford as well. So, and he was benched he was benched at times last year too. So just not a great season last year for him, but it's very inconsistent. So I do think some of the criticism is of course fair, but he did play better towards the end of the season, and so I still think he has upside. And I think the fact he's got a new OC makes Sean Clifford a potential kind of a attractive potential pick in this scenario. I am going to lean towards Kedon Slovis and USC, just for the simple fact I think he's uber talented, and I like the offensive coordinator, and I do like the weapons he has around him. Penn State, Sean Clifford could take that next step, and his ability to hurt you with his legs, and if an offensive coordinator can use that ability appropriately, then I think he could be an attractive pick as well. But for right now, even though they're similar quarterbacks as far as trying to bounce back in 2021 and improve on 2019 and 2020, I do think I'm leaning toward Kedon Slovis because I think he's talented and the people around him. But I want to hear from you. What quarterback would you rather have and why? And am I wrong here? Should I be going with Clifford even though I'm picking Kedon Slovis? I want to hear from you. Let me know your thoughts, and we'll see you next time on our next quarterback related video.